Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Let's make this simple shaker card today. To get started, I'm cutting down my printables in size so that I can set them aside and have more space to work with. I have arranged these printables using Adobe Illustrator, and the pattern was from the Hungry JPEG, the Orca was from Canva Premium, and the fonts for my sentiments were from Font Bundles. Now that we have set aside the printables, we are gonna get started on the card base. For that, I have taken an A4 piece of white cardstock. I'm gonna cut it down to the size 10 inches by 7 inches and fold it in half along the 10-inch side to form my 5 by 7 inch card base. I usually use this size for all my big cards. Now that we are done with the card base, I'm gonna use a knitting needle to score down the middle part of my card. You could also use a bone folder, but the reason I used this knitting needle was back when I did not have a scoreboard. This was a hack that I came across on the internet, and the back of the knitting needle is perfect for having a crisp folding line scored in your card base. So now that I'm folding the card base, I'm reinforcing my fold with a bone folder, and we're done with the card base. Now we're gonna move on to the shaker frame. For the shaker frame, I'm going to be using a piece of paper. I'm gonna cut it down 0.2 inches smaller than my card base, so it's gonna be 4.8 inches by 6.8 inches. After I'm done with the cutting, I always check the panel with my card base to check if I've cut it to the right size. If you have the right size down, your shaker panel would be 0.2 inches smaller than the overall size of your card base. Now I'm marking 0.75 inches from the outside of the panel to create a frame for our shaker. After marking down, I will cut the inside of the frame that I have created to create the window for our shaker that is going to be displaying the scene that you have seen earlier. Now that we are done with the frame for the shaker, I'm going to be marking it down with numbers so I remember which side connects to which side of the frame, and I'm gonna cut it along the diagonals so that we have a smaller panel. Since I do not have a big die cutting machine, I like to use smaller panels and emboss them in my smaller die cutting machine and then join them back together to form a big shaker frame. For embossing the panels, I'm going to use my small die cutting machine, Craft-paca. For this machine, I'm going to be using a small border embossing folder for embossing the sides of my panels. For embossing in this machine, you're going to need 2 B plates. I mistakenly grabbed my A plate. You're going to need 2 B plates and 1 piece of cardstock to act as your C plate and put the extra pressure onto your embossing folder. You're gonna want to carefully arrange the panel into your embossing folder. Because it's a smaller panel, it kept moving, so I really had a hard time figuring out the perfect position. I wanted the place where the stars were more clustered, so I took my time to arrange the paper inside the embossing folder. Now we are going to be creating the sandwich embossing folder with paper between 2 B plates, or you can also put your C plate, which is the cardstock, first and then the last B plate, and run it through the machine. You're going to have a perfect embossed piece of paper. Let's take it out. You can't see, but the embossing on this is amazing. So I'm going to continue doing the same. Some piece of it was left unembossed because I had a bigger piece of paper than the embossing folder length, so I'm gonna emboss that part separately again to the machine. Now I'm done with all the embossed panels, and we're gonna move on to joining the frame back again to create the shaker. Since I had numbered them earlier, it was very easy for me to rearrange the frame according to which I already cut them before, because if you rearrange them in different order, then your diagonals might not even match up. That is why it's a very good idea to number your frames first, so that you can join them back in the exact same manner that you cut them from. Now I'm gonna use double-sided tape to secure the corners of the frame together. You can use a washi tape, you can use a piece of paper with glue, just to hold them together while you move on to the next step. Now that we're done with the frame, we are gonna move on to cutting down the piece of clear acetate sheet that will serve as the window for our shaker. So here I'm taking a clear piece of acetate sheet and I'm gonna cut it down to 0.1 inch smaller than our shaker panel. This is gonna be 4.7 inches by 6.7 inches. Now we're done with cutting down the panel. We're gonna stick it behind our embossed frame. Now I'm gonna be putting down double-sided tape along my frame to hold the acetate sheet in place. Now we're done with the frame. We're gonna be putting down double-sided tape to create the dimension that we need for the sequins to move inside about the shaker. Since my double-sided tape was 1 inch, which is bigger than the width of my frame, I cut it down in pieces and then stuck them to form the frame of a foam tape around my shaker frame. Now that we are done creating the frame, we are gonna move on to the background of the frame, which is gonna be created using some pattern papers and some color papers. I originally wanted to do a scene with orca coming out of the water. I thought it would be very good to add the mountains as well in the view. So we are gonna be cutting down the pattern paper in the size to fit behind the shaker frame. This is gonna be the same size as our acetate sheet, 4.7 inches by 6.7 inches. wanted the waves inside to have a texture, and I had the perfect embossing folder for it. So here I am cutting down the blue paper in a strip so to fit my machine, and I'm gonna emboss it with the wave embossing folder that I have. I'm gonna cut it along the groove there, just to give the wave a little shape. Because this wasn't enough, after checking behind the shaker, I decided to add one more layer of wave right behind this to add height to my wave. So we're gonna be following the same process all over again, embossing the wave and then cutting along the groove with a little bit of space, and then I'm gonna stick them down together, layering one top of another to give height to my wave. And then I'm gonna move on to the mountains of the scene. For the mountains, I decided to use 2 pieces of green paper, dark green and light green, and then I free-handedly drew mountains and then cut them out. For my shaker background, I stuck them together to create a scene of close mountains against far mountains, and then checked them against my shaker background. I mistakenly misplaced my mountains, and it was a little high on the frame, and then I realized my waves would not cover the rest and there would be clouds on the bottom of the frame, because of which I decided to add yet another layer to my frame, to my waves, using the same process that we used before. Now I'm gluing them down in layers to make my layer higher. Now it's perfect. Now I'm gonna carefully stick down my wave onto my background. Don't worry about the extras because we're gonna be cutting them out right now. There you go, perfect frame. Now I'm gonna be fussy cutting out the orca that I have printed earlier to place it in the middle. I made a mistake here again. I placed it too much on the left without remembering that my shaker frame was gonna cover a bit of the scene, so I took it out again and placed it a bit on the right. Because I had a little bit of glue mark to cover it up, I used a little bit of dewdrops that I have gotten in my DC package from Robin's Nest. These are absolutely amazing, and I wanted them to look like water splashes from the body of the orca, so I placed them around the orca in 3 places: near the mouth, near the tail, and up in the sky. I'm very nervous because this is my first voiceover, first video tutorial or process video, whatever you call it. It's my first time, so I'm pretty nervous. Please bear with me. Now that we're done with the scene, I'm gonna continue to form my shaker. I'm gonna add 3 types of sequins: clear, blue, and green to my shaker. I also decided to add a little bit of dewdrops to my shaker. This is when I realized, because the dewdrops have more dimension than my first layer of foam tape, I decided to go in and add a second layer of foam tape to add more dimension to my card shaker frame. This is where things started to get a little messy because things don't usually work out as planned, and there are so many things that can go wrong. So I took away all the backing of my first layer of foam tape, and I measured out my foam tape for the second layer using the shaker frame as the reference. on top of my card cutting mat. After placing this layer, this is where things got messy. It was placed in the wrong place, and while trying to take it out, my first layer of foam tape came up from there, so I had to add another new layer for the first layer, and then I proceeded to finish the frame with the second layer. So when you mess up one part of the card, you kind of get nervous about messing up the other parts. So one mistake leads to another. That's what happened for me in this card. But in the end result looked beautiful. So let's see how I did the rest of the card. So we're gonna take up the foam tape backing, and the reason my shaker is down and my scenery is being placed from the back is because when you try to put the shaker onto the scenery, you might not get it right in the center and the sequins might get stuck to your shaker frame. So it's a very good idea to do it upside down, the shaker frame on the bottom with the sequins and then your background on top, so that the sequins don't get stuck to the foam tape, you don't mess up the alignment of your shaker frame, and everything's perfect. So now we're done with the shaker frame. I had to cut away some part of the top of my shaker frame because my foam tape was showing through. So I'm gonna do some adjustments and then stick it down on top of the frame, on top of the card base. I'm very nervous. This is the point where my electricity went out, so what you see is pure daylight, and it's always fun to craft in pure daylight because I'm a night owl mostly, so it's something very rare for me. I usually craft very late at night, like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. So crafting in the day is something very rare, but something I really enjoy. So we're gonna adjust the frame, I made some adjustments to it off camera. So we'll have to stick it down to the top of the card base, as I'm doing right now. And then we're gonna proceed to cut out the sentiments to put inside the card and on top of the card. As you can see here on top of the card, I had a little more room than I was intending to have. So I later made adjustments to that by cutting down the base a little bit more from the top. Now I'm cutting down the sentiment happy birthday, which will go on top of the card. For this, I wanted it to have a banner-like look. So on one side, I cut it out like banner, and then trimmed down the sides to make it fit on the card. There you go. I absolutely love this font. This is from Font Bundles. I think the name of the font is probably Afterglow or Aftergrow. I absolutely forgot. But it's a very good font that goes with almost all of my cards. So now I'm gonna be putting down the sentiment on top of my card. This is when I decided my card needed a little bit more elements on top. So I decided to add dewdrop diamonds on top of my card that I got from Norman's Nest DT design team package. I absolutely loved the look it gave. It was very light blue and it was not too much on the card, just the right amount of finish. I always love putting some sort of stones, some sort of pearls on my card to add a little bit of extra shine to the card, and this was just perfect for me to use for this card because everything was in white almost, so it needed some little addition of color on the sides. So now we are done with that, we're gonna proceed to the inside of the card. I always add a little bit of sentiment onto the left inside of my card because I feel like it's too empty, because usually writings fill up on the right side but the left side is always blank. So for all my cards, I love to decorate the inside left side of my card. I usually add a sentiment or maybe some die cuts. For this one, I'm going with a simple sentiment, sending you birthday, I forgot the sentiment right now. Sending you sunshine wishes and birthday fishes, the fish pun for the orca. Now I'm gonna be adding some dewdrops to the sides of my sentiment. Usually I add some die cuts, but since I could not add die cuts for this one, I added the dewdrops. Now we're done with the front of the card, and inside of the card we are gonna do the back of the card, which is the signature foostat. We're gonna add a strip of embossed paper and we're gonna layer it on some blue paper and add it to the back of the card. For all my cards, this is something I use to decorate it quickly. If you're gonna be decorating the front of the card, the inside of the card, why leave out the back? That's why I do it. So we're just layering the embossed panel onto the blue paper to create a strip of decorated panel, and we're gonna be adding the sentiment made with love and my logo to the back of the card as well. Now I'm placing the strip onto the back of the card, onto the bottom, cutting down the extras and adding the made with love, and finally finishing it off with my logo. It was such a long process. The entire video was about 2 hours, and the most I could cut it down to was 24 minutes, since you're watching this 24-minute video of me just talking on and making my card. I am gonna make an envelope right now using an 11-inch paper, and I'm gonna be creating an envelope of 6-inch by 8-inch, which is 1 inch bigger than my card. Since my card already has a dimension, I wanted to have a little room in my envelope since I was making a normal envelope. Otherwise, the envelope would be too full or wouldn't close. So you need that extra little 1-inch room if you have dimension in your card, or you could also proceed to make an envelope with a box style envelope which has a width of maybe 0.5 inch. So I absolutely hate making envelopes, and I luckily got my hands on the envelope maker, which is the mini envelope punch board by We Are Memory Keepers, and it makes the process of envelope making so much less stressful for me. I'm just rolling the paper so that it becomes straight and then finishing off my envelope. I always love to decorate my envelopes, so we're going to be adding a little bit of elements on the top of my envelope after finishing it off. Here I'm checking the size of my envelope, which was perfect. Then I'm proceeding to cut out the last sentiment I had prepared for the top of the envelope, a little something for you and another orca on top of the card. I arranged them in the middle, and then I proceeded to add few more dewdrops like I did on my shaker background, but this time in a little deeper shade of blue. And I absolutely love these dewdrops. I also used the lighter shade again. We are soon gonna be done with our card. It's such a huge relief that I got to finish this. And here's a closer look at my card. Hope you like this tutorial video of mine. Thank you for staying till the end, and hopefully my next videos are gonna be shorter. Let's hope for that. Have a great day and stay safe and take care. Bye bye.